I can see over my life, like I said, peer to peer or like education has changed the game for me. Learning from guys that do it. You know what I mean? I'm not a huge fan of learning for a guy who set out to be a coach. You know, I think it's a matter of I see my life as not about me. It's about people in our houses. It's just about other people. Like that's just the way I see it.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Only Exit. I am your co-host Caleb here in the studio with Aaron, your co-host. What's up, Aaron?
What's up, Caleb? I'm here as your co-host.
Yeah.
Only Exit. We got a great guest here.
We do. we do.
I don't know why that was funny.
I don't know. It's just sometimes
I talked over you, so I was going to say something, and I'm glad I didn't because I don't think it would have fell flat. But
sometimes you get hit with laughter and you don't know where it came from, and that's okay, right? It's fun to laugh at nothing sometimes. So
for sure.
Come on. So, man, I actually am really thrilled about the guest that we have on our show today. I met Jared Galde, I guess it's been about 6 or 8 months ago. We got introduced through a mutual friend and just really connected over shared values as well as shared business concepts and entrepreneurial beliefs and and focuses and ideology and all that kind of stuff. It was just like cut from the same cloth. And just kind of felt that. I don't know if you guys, as our listeners, have ever kind of felt that with a new connection, but it's like, man, I know that this guy, like I'm supposed to be more connected and have more conversations with this guy. And so it's been a long time coming getting Jared on the show. This is personally awesome for me to be able to have this conversation with all of you guys and here with Jared.
Yeah.
And so Jared Galde has built quite a successful coaching firm, as well as a significant portfolio of real estate, specifically having focused multiple different, but having a lot of success in sober living housing. And so there's a lot of backstory behind that and things like that. So I just want to welcome Jared to the show. Man, Jared, thank you so much for being here with us.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I agree. It's the cut from the same cloth. You can tell that. And I think in this season, it's I can see how valuable that is. What you just said, there's only so much time. Physics are against all of us, and the people that we surround ourselves with matter. And so Wayne, who introduced us, is one of those men in my life where, when he came into my life, I'm like, we're gonna be friends, and whether you see this or not,
right?
That's Wayne to me, and I know you guys are close, and I feel that. So that's cool.
No, that's amazing, Jared. So I'd love for you just to give our listeners just a little grid and backstory on Jared, just to kind of, before we launch into, I know you literally have, we've been on a few calls and you just have so much value to give. And this show's usually only like half hour, 40 minutes long. And so give us the backstory, but then let's get in and get as much of the good stuff from Jared Galde as we can get.
Let's go, man. Yeah. I think in a nutshell, I knew looking back, in retrospect, I can see that I was made to be an entrepreneur my whole life. And all of us who know that have a journey. And so my journey was learning. I was pretty resourceful early on. Something sticks back in my story that kind of cracks me up, where my mom, honor is a core value of mine. So I love my mom. And that's not just to preface it, but we were in Maui with my mom, and she said, I remember when you were 10 years old, I thought you were such a good decision maker. And I can clearly say now, looking back, I was a terrible decision maker at 10 years old, but, and every kid is a terrible decision maker at 10 years old. That's why parents and dads matter. But through that, like I said, I learned I was very resourceful, early on. Then I got a job, and I married my wife, and that was a season where I learned I could sell something. I was very good at that. I sold lumber. I worked basically I got a job like my dad would want me to, the union, driving a forklift for Boise Cascade in the yard. And pretty quickly I was like, this isn't going to work out. I can't do laps around all the union guys. Where else can I go? And so I got into sales pretty fast. And there just wasn't a structure. There was is the only sales job I ever knew. There wasn't a structure there to make it a high enough income to matter, unless I just kind of climbed the corporate ladder. And I could see clearly I did not want to do that, And so as that developed over time, I came to this point where I was like, man, I looked at the numbers, and I'm pretty good at math, and I looked at the numbers, and I'm like, there's so much more for me here. And I had this moment where uh, it was a really pivotal moment in my life where I could see my wife's vision. She had this vision for raising our kids and homeschooling our kids, and having it be different than we see in society, and raising them as entrepreneurs. Even she almost saw that before I did, and I was kind of scared of it. And in 2012, I jumped in, I would say, against my will, into real estate. That was something where my grandma got sick. My mom had been in real estate pretty much my whole life. And so mom needed to help grandma, and she asked one of us kids to jump into there at like the moment where I'm just going, what am I supposed to do? And I wrote my wife this crazy long email. I'm like, babe, I described this whole process to her of how I'm feeling and how I feel like I need to jump into this and create this vision that she has. And she answers me back on that email. She's at work, and she's like, I agree. And I was like, well, I mean, to be honest, it kind of pissed me off. I'm like, well, you agree with what? That was a lot.
She's like, I'm already there.
I just wrote you my whole life story. And then she sent an email back to me that said more. And I read back, and like that, the essence of that is I knew I was made for more. And so that was in 2012. And I jumped in, I got my real estate broker's license in 17 days in Washington. I sold my first house on day 18. I wish I could say that it was all like, that was the whole story. Like I just never stopped selling a house every single Saturday. But that was a journey of being an agent, but I knew that wasn't fit for me. What I saw at that time was I wanted to figure out how to make passive income in real estate so that I can be at church all the time. I know that's something we, somewhat have in common, is I felt like this call to ministry, and I see it very much as my purpose is helping other men figure out their life, because it's so hard in today's day and age, and I went on this journey, and that's what it really was. That's what all of the different parts of real estate was a journey. And so that vision of creating passive income so that I could serve people, that's really what, that's what led to this sober living. There's a lot of frustration points along the way, but like you said, getting into some of the meat of the story. Now we have, now we're building a portfolio of sober living homes, faster than ever. We've gotten pretty good at it. We know what we're doing. We know how to help people do that. But all along, I saw that I needed to grow. My mindset needed to change. My identity needed to shift. And I felt that in a deep way. So that's what I started seeking after, was personal growth. And at this point, I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on personal growth. And through that journey, I can now see that, like, I just wasn't a person who could handle success. So I wasn't having a bunch of success, and as you become a person of value, I think that I can see this shift where everybody wants to, we hear this value proposition all the time. I want to bring value to this situation. And there reaches a point where you see that I have value. Like I have value to bring in this marketplace. And as that happened, my business partner came in to my life, and it became this. I saw multiplication. I saw what that looked like when two people come together in agreement on something, and their whole mind, body, and soul is invested into something and building it together, and we'll do whatever it takes, and I saw that shift. And that's led to where, we're having this conversation now. And through that process, I see the men of this country just need help. And I know some guys who have, none of us are remotely perfect, but there's some men around me that are great in areas of life. Right. Yeah. And they're at a point where we know some templates and some things that have worked in our lives that we pass on. So it's kind of where we're at.
It sounds like one thing you said, just in discovering that you were an entrepreneur, it seems like, and that resonated with me, because I didn't know I was entrepreneurial growing up. I wasn't very self-aware. No one told me. No one guided me, right? And so, so it's for your journey. It sounds like you as you got into the job, the lumber, and then even being a real broker, where you were kind of your own boss and could be entrepreneurial. There was always something though where it was like more, right? And it feels like some of that is so like value driven for what you're doing now, and I just think that's really cool how you had this, but it like it was unfolding. It feels like as I was listening to you. So where I guess where did you when did you always kind of see yourself having impact and having like, because what you're doing now is amazing, where you're combining the business side and the real estate and the investing side with something that has a huge impact and is a huge vision. So I'd love to just hear your thoughts there.
Yeah. You're totally right. When there's this call to more, so I think that there's something powerful that a lot of people say they have core values, and then when you understand what your core values are, one thing my mentor says that I love he says when you know what matters most, you can live a life that most matters. And so once when growth is a core value of mine, right? When I understand that, then I'm going to constantly grow. But part of that growth through that process of more, like you're talking about, is, in my opinion, is we're entrepreneurs, and I see the root of that word is like an undertaker. Like I'm gonna solve the problem. Like if it's up to me, or if it's gonna be, it's up to me, is sort of a thing. But really, like um, here I am, God, send me to that. And I see as we don't have to make up problems. There are a lot of freaking problems in the world. There are real ones,
Yeah.
And so opioid addiction is a massive one where I feel like I didn't choose that. It chose us. It wasn't something I had walked through, but we saw the model, and it's like, hey, we can bring what's special about us to this situation and make some change, So it's like that. I see that. And then there's been this thing in my gut all along about I felt like I was called to the next generation, right? Anybody who feels like they want to have an impact with their life, you're kind of looking down line. I look at legacy as passing on a way of thinking to my kids, the same as I would look at passing on a way of thinking to employees, things like that. That's a legacy, is actually changing some mindsets and making more possible in somebody else's life. But I saw this thing all along where if I'm going to change the next generation, it's through fathers, it's through men like me who've been through a transformation, even while my kids are growing up. My kids are 14 or 13 and 12 years old as we're having this conversation, and they could, they're smart enough where they could show you, over these 12 years how I've grown up. At this point, they don't miss a thing. But there's something to father. It has to be with fathers. And so that's those two things. I see this massive problem in the earth that are very real. Fatherlessness is very real. Addiction is plaguing our country in a massive way when you look into it. And so those are real problems. And that's why I'm alive, is to solve those. And as we grow and grow and grow, we have more and more capacity to actually help in those areas and solve problems. And if you're doing it right, it benefits you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I've lived by something that my very first business mentor told me when I was probably 18 or 19 years old, and it's the Zig Ziglar quote: "If you help enough people get what they want, then you'll have everything you want." And it really is that. But I love what you said in that, like, going back to the value proposition thing, right? Like you're not actually going to bring value to the marketplace until you actually realize that you have value to bring. And not just that you have skills, not just that you have ideas, but that you yourself are valuable. That you like there's a contribution that you have that you can bring to the world, to the people around you, that nobody else has the ability to bring. Like nobody else can bring what Jared Galde can bring. They can bring financial education and real estate education, and they can bring all that stuff. Like everyone can duplicate that, but like the full like essence of who you are. And I think the just really, my brother-in-law and I, we've had this kind of side passion project that we've never done anything like really with, but we talk about it all the time. We're both building our businesses, and those things are successful. But it really spurred out of this article that I stumbled across several years ago. And the first words in the article was 86% of fathers in America feel like they're failing. A mass study, 86% of fathers in America feel like they're failing. And it gave a lot of reasons. The top two reasons were both related to money. The first one was, I feel like I spend too much of my time away from my family, trying to provide for my family. And reason number 2 was I feel like even though I do that, I'm not providing well enough. And so, like, for me, like, one of the values that you and I connected over, right, was our shared faith, right? Like, we both believe in Jesus. We both believe in the teachings of the Bible, and this idea of money and it kind of being a proving ground for your trustworthiness for greater riches, right?
Mm.
It's like Jesus teaches, if you're faithful with the little things, then you'll be faithful with more. And when he's saying that, he's saying the little thing is money, right? If you're faithful with this little thing called money, then that's actually a proving ground and a testing ground of your ability to be faithful with the things that matter more, right? And so I would love, man, just in light of that whole mindset and that whole thought and that 86% statistic, what do you think in light of that is the biggest thing that fathers need to focus on? Fathers who are entrepreneurs, whatever, what's the biggest thing that fathers need to focus on in order to not fall in that 86% that feel like they're failing?
Mm. Man, that's such a deep question. And I like how it's even worded in that, where it's like they feel like they're failing. Right.
Mhm.
And I think that most people are walking around by default, if I'm being honest, because I am that person. I've been that person. I've seen that person. I know that person. I'm surrounded by those people. And it's a very real thing where we feel like we're in this never ending race that we can't kind of catch up with in America. And I see that in a massive, it's an identity shift. Right. And so it's that feeling of their failing is because you got to acknowledge what it is that it's hard to have a job and play math kind of by addition, like you said, in that thought as a whole. Money it is very much so a little thing. I think that, like you said, getting onto the things that matter, if we're looking at how we believe, then people are the most important resource on earth. And so figuring out how to love yourself is a massive identity shift, and figuring out um, who Jesus is and how that shame can instantly come off, and you can make different decisions that aren't by default anymore. You can decide what matters to you, and you can make that matter to you, and you can press on, and you don't have to kind of get caught in everything that's coming after us. And so the answer to that is a deep question in my opinion, but it actually has some very simple answers for a lot of people. If you know that you're made for more, if you know that you're supposed to go to if you know you're supposed to be an entrepreneur, you're supposed to be more successful than you are now, or there's supposed to be this this bridge. It's an identity shift to know that that you just you're going to keep pressing on. It's knowing who you are. It's knowing that you're not going to hit every single marker, but you can't do everything. And it's a simplifying thing. So it's really disciplines. And I think that one thing, Hormozy cracks me up. He's like, people got rich before the morning routine was ever created. And
Yeah.
because it cracks me up how like everybody's got 6,487 morning routines that they've tried, or whatever it is that they've tried,
and none of those things made them actually get their money.
They started their morning routine after they became multimillionaires because they didn't have to get up at 6 a.m. and start grinding.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, it's real. But I'm saying that to say, know what matters to you and build something into your life, because discipline is going to matter. You know what I mean? And a lot of us that are feeling that way, if we're being honest with ourselves, we just don't have the discipline, and it's okay. There are millions of people like you. And if you find some guys who want to have that discipline in their life, who want to create more in their life, then it becomes possible, because you see it's possible, and you're with other men who are actively pursuing their dreams, pursuing their goals, living according to their core values, being people who bring that value to the marketplace. And then understand one thing that you touched on, which is a big deal, is stewardship. I look at it in terms of the money's not mine. If God, I don't know who the quote is from off the top of my head, but if God can get it through you, he'll get it to you. Right. And so I look at that as I'm always going to be a person who's sowing in to solve some sort of a problem in the earth. And there are many, and they are massive. And so so it's being a person who knows you're of value so that you can bring value, and understanding, you're only passing on the way you're thinking, because everything else will go away.
Yeah, man. The whole discipline thing, and how discipline is really the anchor, that I feel like for me a few years ago, and I actually did a whole episode here on the X about this a few months ago, and how it all shifted for me when I exchanged the word discipline for integrity in my mind. Like, discipline has like three connotations: a negative connotation, this is going to be freaking hard; a neutral connotation, like there's no real merit to doing the thing, it's all about the outcome; and then the positive connotation of, well, if I do this, then I get the good outcome, right? But integrity, when I switch the word, there is no negative or neutral connotation. It's only positive, right? When I think of I'm being a person of integrity by following through with this, then that always means that's a good thing for me, because it's always anchored in an identity rather than some undesirable action. It's the difference in like inspiration and motivation, right? Like, if I constantly need to be motivated, then it's probably because I don't want to do the thing. Instead, I need inspiration, which is something that actually gets inside of me and changes my desire to where now I actually want to do the thing. Right.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's integrity over discipline, inspiration over motivation. And that's actually, for me, and it works differently for everyone, but for me, those two realities have massively leveled up my ability to stay disciplined in the things that I do, and kind of anchored in an identity. So I love that, man. I love the value that you're bringing here around discipline.
Yeah, I'd love to just kind of go along with values and integrity, like just for you to share just briefly on your, the sober living houses, right? And how, because I'm just thinking of like, when you're an entrepreneur, you're in business, a lot of times you're like, well, this is my business, right? And of course, I'm a person of faith, I have values and everything. And then over here is kind of like my ministry, or, or the, my where I'm adding value or impacting people. But you've been able to merge that, and I'd love to just hear how you kind of started. You said you got one, I think when we talked earlier, you got one of these sober living homes going, and then now you're starting to scale these and have gotten really good at this model. But it's also something where there's a need, right? And not even just a need where you can make money, but people are being impacted. And so I'd love for you to just share kind of quickly how you kind of first got into that and how it's grown.
Yeah. Awesome. I think it's the same thing. You're not wrong starting with values and principles. I mean, it's a matter of sober living homes are a massive, massive need. Like I talked about, it's addiction has gotten terrible in our country. 2019, there was 25,000 people who died of a fentanyl overdose, and that 5x'd in 4 years. And so like fentanyl is making its way everywhere. It's fine. You're hearing about it in families and relatives and communities. It's changed. It's nasty. And that's a 25-year progression of opioid addiction that's just been a nasty wave over our country. So it is certainly a need, and it tears apart families. It's one of those things where, like, when you see it, when you feel it, when you understand how a lot of times somebody, like some guys I know and love and respect and work with that are clean and sober now, did terrible things to everybody that they loved and themselves. And like, it's just such a wrecker of families and of situations and of people, and it kills so many people that like I said, I didn't have to deal with addiction. But once we saw like the first house, and it was absolutely something to where it was financially driven at first, and I didn't really understand it. So it was the first house that we got was in the town that I grew up in, and the mayor lives right down the street from this really nice house that we're buying, right? And I just meet it's a friend of mine, Andrea White, who's a rock star agent up there, and she's like, hey, this nonprofit wants to lease this house out. And so I see where the house is at in this town that I grew up in. It's got an epic view of the Puget Sound. Marysville, Washington is where it was at, and And like I said, the mayor lives down the street. And I'm like, dude, you're going to move drug addicts in here? Like, that doesn't really make sense to me. I'm not, I don't understand. And, and I was like, I'm going to need to know more, see more, all those things. So we looked at a few other houses and that they already had operational. And one of them was right next to one of my best friends who is a police officer in that town. And so he's like, dude, yeah, we love having them next to us. Like, he's like, at first I was kind of sketchy, but then I'm like, hey, if not next to me, then where should they live? Like, they don't need to live in the ghetto next to their drug dealer. So here we go. And he loved having them there. He basically kind of, and all the houses I looked at kind of affirmed what they told me about. They're going to take care of the house and they have systems and operations in place and all those things. Well, so the day after I look at this house, and I'm trying to figure it out. At the time, I'm a house flipper and still brokering houses and kind of doing whatever I can. I started a hack, and I shouldn't say hack. My brothers that were in that with me were awesome guys, but we weren't very good at making a construction company to flip houses. So I'm in this process of like, okay, this isn't going to continue to work. What am I going to do next? And that's when Sober Living found us. And I met Travis a few months prior to that, but he was the first person in my life. That's what I mean by the right alignment. So like, if you're aligned in values and you're aligned in where you want to go and what you see in the future, if those things really align and you come together in agreement, the next day, Travis had been like telling me, he's like, I'm not interested in these flips you're doing. I'm only interested in long-term investments. And I'm like, all right. I'm like, dude, I think. And I didn't even think of Travis, but I was driving by his house on the lake and I saw him and I'm like, dude, hey, so I'm looking at this rental property, and I don't know, 3 hours later, after about 100 questions, he had built a couple of different spreadsheets and he's like, dude, I'll make sure money's coming forever if they need more of these. And that's where it hit me on some principles that had to stick. It's like, okay, I see how big the need is. So we have to be completely unemotional about these numbers so that we can be emotional about helping these people. Mm-hmm. And like, the numbers just have to work. Like, we were talking about stewardship, kind of bringing values into everything, every single thing that you do, knowing that we're solving a problem with this. We're not going to be those people who are like, hey, let's see if I can maybe go get rich and then buy them a house and give it to them. No, there's a structure in place. There are organizations in place that they can't really buy the real estate, but they can pay rent really well. And so for us, it's like, hey, I know that we're great at creating structure around this. I know that we're going to build in principles to where we actually take care of these people. We don't turn into the slumlords that, we've kind of fought against that mentality. It's a prove it game, I would say, in sober living. You're not going to continue to grow if you're in it for yourself. Yeah. But it can work for you very, very well, but the organizations will like smell greed on you. They'll like smell, it's like if you turn into a slumlord, you're not going to work with them very long. We've actually been, through these last few years, there's been lots of landlords that are closing houses that they call us so that we can buy them a house, or buy that house specifically so that we can be their landlord. And it's a matter of designing those numbers, designing everything about the business where we're serving first and we're loving on them. Another way I put it is, I want them to worry about their recovery. I don't want them to worry about the house they're living. That's my job.
Yeah.
So you buy these houses then? Do you do it with groups of investors, or is it just your own capital? Or you buy the house and then you fix it up, and then do you rent out rooms, or is it like an organization, like whether it's government or rehab? Like, is there funding for that for people that are in that season, or how does that work? Or like the business model?
Yeah, kind of happens all sorts of ways, but I would say, we sign one lease with a nonprofit or a for-profit who handles the management of the recovery, right?
Okay.
And so we're the real estate guys, and so like those organizations pay us on one lease amount. They get paid per bed. They call the house members, not tenants. They don't fall under normal landlord tenant laws, but we work with Oxford Houses, probably the biggest in the country, a nonprofit that they've been around since 1975. And I think they lease somewhere around 3,700 homes nationwide right now.
Wow.
And they need to keep growing. And they're just one of, you can Google any city sober living, and there's 9 of them kind of doing their own structure. There's levels to it, whether there's going to be treatment in the house, whether you have to have medical staff on site or not. The levels will go up. Sometimes they'll you know, it can be as much as a full-time nurse on site, but our houses are mostly level 1 houses, meaning that they're peer run. The people in the house have already been through some sort of treatment,
Mm-hmm.
and they pay their own way to live there. They do their own chores to live there.
Yeah.
But yeah, we collect on one rent check for almost all the houses.
And you probably don't have a lot of vacancy and different things like that, right? Because you getting
Yeah.
these
Zero.
they're begging
Zero,
for
none.
you to get another house going. It sounds like
Yeah.
that's really
we,
cool. And what are you across in different states?
Yeah. So we're in 14 different states with that. Yeah.
That's
Very
awesome.
cool. Yeah, that's so neat. Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
That's really cool. And then sort of from that, I know, Jared, in our previous conversations, you've kind of started building this community where it's sort of twofold, right? It's like there's the option where you actually teach and coach people how to get into like investing in sober living, housing, but then also there's this more like holistic community around men of faith who are, you know, focused on faith, family, finances, fitness, you know, all the F's, right? And so
Yeah.
You got food in there?
food,
Yeah.
good food, you know, no. So I'd love just for our listeners' sake, because I know there's folks out there that either of those types of things would add tremendous value. And so I'd love for you just to share a little bit about the other side of the business, the coaching side as well.
Yeah, that's great, man. I think that I can see over my life, like I said, you know, peer to peer or like education has changed the game for me. Learning from guys that do it. You know what I mean? I'm not a huge fan of learning for a guy who set out to be a coach. You know, I think it's a matter of I see my life as not about me. It's about people in our houses. It's just about other people. Like that's just the way I see it. And so with the sober living stuff, like the need is so massive in our country where I have an abundance mindset anyways. Like God sent me, then there's always going to be enough for me, you know? So for me, I look at it in terms of the need is so much bigger than us that I kind of owe it to everybody involved to teach others how to get involved in the game, how to do it well, how we actually create an impact. It's so much bigger than us. So that's why we've created coaching for that. And then on the men's side, I feel like so many entrepreneurs who are looking to grow, they bounce from like learning this tool, that tool to add on to their business or other things like that. We go through different coaching phases where it's like you want what somebody else has. But I think that it's I see throughout it, like I said, it's about who you become. And so just understanding that you are as an entrepreneur, there's a reason in your own community where you only feel like there's only a couple of people like you. And so when we get out of that box and we get to doing life with people that are entrepreneurs that do come together in agreement. And I think that there's something so powerful, in a small room setting with 20 people. We do masterminds that are powerful, where it's entrepreneurs who come together and we really set the tone. Like, this isn't a place for your measuring contest. You know, somebody in this room's got more money than you. Somebody in this room's wife is prettier than yours. You know, like we're coming here humbly to learn from each other, to grow together, to share our resources, and to like be the men that we say that we are. But furthermore than that, when you're starting out in entrepreneurship, you need people that actually have your back, that do it, you know, on the ongoing. And that's really what the coaching community is about, is coming together, being people of principle, learning how to instill those principles and values into your life, and how to walk them out with a group of guys that are doing it and keeping you accountable to doing it. So
super good. Super good. So how can, before we jump into the exit round here, how can our listeners find out more about, I think you have an upcoming mastermind in September of this year down in Texas, right? How can they find out more either about that, plugging in and being a part of that, or just getting general information about your coaching?
Yeah, I think for the sober living, you just go to rootedsoberliving.com. We have it up there to where that's where we help people get started in sober living. That's the basis for it. There's lots of ways where we can help you, but we have a course on there that really lays out everything you could need to know to get started in that realm. Certainly, if you know a little bit about real estate going in, you'll feel equipped at the end of that to be able to buy one of them, because it's not rocket science, to get into the game. But that's where you would get the help there. And I think as far as the next mastermind coming up, that September one is going to be tied to Limitless. Just find me on social media. As I put it, my name, Jared Galde is all of my handle stuff. Anything that we have up and coming would be on there. We're doing a big launch to grow that community here in June of this year, and just find us on social media.
Perfect. So it's at Jared Galde on Instagram or whatever preferred platform you use. So, all right, man, Jared, we're at the point in the show. We're going to jump in the last couple of minutes, the exit round. These are kind of a lightning round type questions. We just bullet fire, ask these same 5 questions to all of our guests. I'm excited to get your answers. So I'll jump in with question number 1. Jared, what is your favorite all-time business book?
Favorite all-time business book? Ooh. I feel like it's new in my life, but I just love Alex Hormozi's whole model. So $100 million leads or $100 million offers. Take it.
Yeah.
Take either one. Feel like it's a masterclass on marketing, and it's fresh in my mind.
Yeah, that's cool.
I agree.
Question number 2. We asked this because we're talking with entrepreneurs and about owning the exit. What percentage of your income would you say is passive versus income that requires your active involvement?
I feel like I'm still in the point where passive income doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense in my mind. I feel like that's the point I'm still at the journey. You have this, we talked a lot about work-life balance. I'm in a harmony state. I would say nothing about my income is very passive. As far as rent, percentage of my income, I don't know, half probably.
Mm-hmm. But you're still working even with that. It sounds like. It's not fully passive because you're choosing to stay involved and work that and have that active piece.
Yeah, we gotta build people if we're trying to build an organization, and I'm very much in that phase. So
that's really cool.
That's great. So you talked about being in a harmony state, but what is one thing that you wish that you could do more of, but kind of business responsibility, things like that hold you back?
More of. Man, traveling. We just talked about this. I'll say that you got to it's like you got to put them on the books or they don't happen. And we just walked through like a 1.5 season where it's like, hey, we didn't go anywhere. We like to go places. Let's fix that.
Yeah, man. I'll give a quick hack. It's not for the financial benefit, but for the accountability benefit. Like a couple years ago, I bought a timeshare because if you don't use it, you lose it, and you're going to pay for it regardless of whether you go. So you're going to go, right?
Yeah.
Every year. So we bought that, and it has upped our travel game for sure on the front of it's hard to get away. So anyway, buy a timeshare. So anyway,
there's a lot of them for sale.
Yeah, no, you can buy them on eBay for pennies on the dollar for real. So anyway,
Jared, if you could go back, to your 18-year-old self back, younger Jared, what business advice would you give to your younger self?
What business advice would I give to myself? I think the biggest thing that most people need to understand is that to choose joy in the storm, and that's you're to see that stuff is going to happen no matter what, that there's going to be things that come against whatever it is that you see in the future, but to choose to truly get in your spirit that you never lose. You win sometimes and you learn. And I think that's one of the most powerful things over my life that changed everything. In the Bible, it's James 1:2-4. It says, consider it pure joy whenever you face trials of many kinds. And consider it it tells me I have a choice. And it says whenever you face trials of many kinds, which doesn't say if they're coming. And so I think I watched the biggest transition in my life when I stopped being frustrated by things that I should have expected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's really powerful.
That reminds me of a quote that I just saw. It says, winners are just losers that didn't quit.
Amen.
And that idea of like persevering and what you just said of knowing, sometimes we just think that it's going to be easy or all work out according to plan, and it doesn't, right? The results are never in question, but like getting there, is the unknown and all, like you said, those things that come against us. Knowing that's something I want to instill in my kids too, like, cause they're young boys, they're, little kids, but of just knowing like, hey, the goals and the dreams and everything that you have, like there's going to be obstacles for that, right? There's going to be challenges. There's going to be things that come against that. And that's what's the Bible. I mean, Jesus told us that was going to happen. And so kind of knowing that, so that we don't become discouraged or disillusioned or, because we just expect that, and we know that's going to be part of the journey. So I think that's really cool. I appreciate that advice.
Yeah, no, that's really good. So last question, what's your strategy for creating time freedom and financial freedom for yourself and your family? And give our listeners 1 or 2 strategic tips.
I always come back to core values. So margin is one of my core values, and it's a deep word to me. Any one of my core values is a deep word to me, but margin is a big one. Margin has to do with time with my family. Margin has to do with what I'll accept in deals and business, what that looks like for our lives. Financially living off of margins, not off of a budget. I'm not the guy who's going to tell you where every penny has gone, but I can tell you the margins that are spent in different directions and what they look like. I think that's that being something that the tip on that is like I said, Enron was, they said that integrity was their number one core value. Like you said, you tied integrity. And if that matters to you, if you're a person who wants to actually build integrity and you hold to where like I'm on time and those things, it's one thing to say, but it's another thing to live it. So I look at my core values as a measurement. So like in my journal time, there's one, that's one of the most important things in my life is journal time. I have to document what's happening. I have to document the growth. I have to document how to get better. I have to get my thoughts out of me and what that looks like, and leaving margin for the things that matter. I weigh myself daily in my journal. Did I leave margin for my kids, my family? I'm not gonna. No days are perfect. And if you live by default, it's going to go the way of you not spending any time with them instead of, looking at it in terms of how did I spend my time today? How did that look? Did I spend it with the people that I love, that I've declared that I'm building these little warriors? And back to what Aaron said, it's like, I force adversity upon my kids too. Did I leave time to do that? They're 13 and 12. They're going to be entrepreneurs. Well, they're right now, they're sort of entrepreneurs. They're sort of mini consultants in my businesses,
Yeah.
But I'm forcing adversity upon them, knowing that that's coming. And am I leaving margin for that too?
And you do that so you can pay them, and then you can get a tax write-off, and then you can invest it in an IRA for them. No, that's fantastic. I just met with a CPA last week, and I'm literally going to start doing that with my 3 kids. They're going to be models.
A little young, aren't they? A little bit young to work.
They can be models, and I can pay them per photo shoot. That's what she said.
That's awesome.
Anyway, so I want to ask a bonus question because you mentioned your core values several times throughout the episode, and so I'd love just to hear, what are your core values? Just give us the one words. Like, what are they?
Honor, growth, margin, revelation, and joy.
That's awesome. So
yeah,
honor, growth, margin, revelation, and joy.
Yep.
So good.
Yeah,
so good.
It is.
Well, man, this has been a great conversation.
Really good.
I knew starting this conversation that we were probably going to go longer than 35 or 40 minutes, just because every time we've talked, we've went longer than we should have, or than we said we would. And so, but man, this has been super valuable. I think our listeners have gotten a lot from you, Jared. So thanks again. Hey, if you're listening right now and you've enjoyed Jared, you want to get more connected with Jared, don't forget to look him up on social media at Jared Galde. Check out rootedcompanies.com or rootedsoberliving.com if you're more interested in his coaching programs and things like that he offers. And yeah, Aaron, any final thoughts before we shut this one down?
No, this is a good one. I'm going to go back and listen to this one again. So I think just my big takeaway is just the having those values be the mode. It almost doesn't matter what you're doing, but
Yeah.
just having those underlying values though of, that you mentioned, was kind of my big takeaway.
Yeah. I
Was
love
just
that.
that those things are the guiding principles, and because that's where the deeper, where what matters, right? So yeah, I love all that you shared.
Yep. So good.
Awesome, man.
All right. Thanks everyone again for listening to Own the Exit. That's all we got for you today. Keep crushing it.
Keep crushing it.